Okay, so I'm writing this because I have a slight problem with how we use the term Machiavellian. Oh my god, this must be the most misused denotation of all time. I've heard Shakespeare's Iago called Machiavellian, Hamlet called Machiavellian, Joker called Machiavellian, and that's not even to mention the innumerable quizzes online to test how Machiavellian are you, which ask you really weird questions like, do you approve of legalised euthanasia? I don't see how in the least this question relates to the political advice given by Niccolo Machiavelli, but maybe I just read the book wrong. First, let me explain who Machiavelli really was. Niccolo Machiavelli was an Italian diplomat and philosopher who wrote a book called The Prince, addressed to the governor of Florence, to advise him on, well, how to govern. He did this essentially to get a nice comfy place at the governor's side as an advisor, and this strategy worked pretty damn well. And Machiavelli would have lived a pretty great life if the Florentines hadn't been crushed later on, dissolving the source of Machiavelli's power and wealth. But, back to the Prince. In his book, Machiavelli gives ruthlessly pragmatic advice on how to gain and retain power, through various methods such as fostering alliances, destroying rivals, and winning over the people. He does not, as many suggest, rely purely on deception and deceit, although these are tools that probably might go hand in hand with his methods. He does recommend, shall we say, morally dubious acts, including wiping out the previous noble family in any province you conquer to prevent uprisings. He praises this one prince named Cesare... I don't know how to pronounce old foreign names. Anyway, he praises this prince Cesare, who uses a particularly ruthless governor to subjugate a chaotic province and its violent factions, and then executed that province later to appease the people, once the province had been completely crushed, gaining their love and forgiveness. In fact, one of his main pieces of advice is that to win a province, one must destroy its powerful factions while supporting its weaker ones, whilst never allowing them to grow. Do you see where all of Machiavelli's principles lead? They all lead towards the creation of a stable peace. Machiavelli does not encourage constant violence against the people to keep them weak, as this would make them hate you, not fear you. Indeed, he asserts that a rule maintained by violence is impossible to keep, because the cruelties inflicted must constantly be increased to keep the population afraid to act against you. And, when you cannot or do not increase your cruelties, the people will revolt and soon dispose of you. Instead, he recommends that all necessary cruelty should be done at a single interval in time, so that the rest of the time can be spent building up trust and love in the people. It should be easier now to see why naming characters like Iago Machiavellian is more of an insult to Machiavelli than a true depiction of his philosophy. Iago is not Machiavellian. He wants the opposite of Machiavelli does: chaos. The same goes for characters like the Joker. A Shakespearean character sort of in the middle, though often cited as Machiavellian, is Macbeth, to which I say, not really. While Macbeth doesn't shy away from ruthlessness, his methods are much less effective at retaining the kingdom, as seen by the end of the novel, when his constant cruelty against the population causes them all to hate him. Anyways, I feel like Macbeth is a story more about guilt and the pitfalls of power than about Machiavelli's code, but I digress. Here are some characters that actually are Machiavellis. Tywin Lannister from Game of Thrones. Tywin Lannister is another brilliant character from the mind of George R.R. Martin that seems to follow Machiavelli's steps almost religiously. Personally orders the execution of the Targaryen family, including Elia Martell and her children. He fosters alliances with weaker houses like the Freys to destroy his larger enemies, the Starks. He is actually quoted by one of the characters as saying that it is better to be feared than loved. A true Machiavellian, to be sure. Another topical Machiavel is Francis Underwood, from House of Cards. Frank is a believer in the same ruthless pragmatism as Machiavelli, although perhaps goes even more extreme. He uses people when they are weak, coercing Peter Russo into being his pawn, and then disposing of him when he has outlived his usefulness, which should remind us all of a certain example Machiavelli gave us of a prince and a ruthless governor. He does the same to Zoe Barnes, supporting her while weak, then destroying her when she becomes strong. So now, hopefully you should have a better idea of who Niccolo Machiavelli was and what he really stood for. Hopefully we can move away from the shallow concept of Machiavellianism that we are presented with today and can move forward into contemplating true Machiavellianism, a philosophy which is not cruel but pragmatic. Lee Kuan Yew was a professed Machiavellian, and I don't think he was a cruel man. Morally dubious? Certainly. Morally reprehensible? Perhaps. Well, with that, see you next time.